to another robot adventures helpful video. Kanpai. So, oh shit, he fell down. This is the 6th time filming this intro. I filmed a bunch of stuff where I talked about my direct feed Mark 8 extruder on my Flying Bear P902. So the problem was I had a clog because the filament broke, and then the way to unclog a nozzle is to stick a wire in through the nozzle and, push out the hot loads. But, yeah, it's really troublesome, and it's far easier just to replace the whole throat, heater block, and nozzle than to try to get the wire in there and do some stuff. But even doing that, it's it's a pain in the ass, because you have to unscrew a bunch of stuff, and I'll show some footage of everything that I did, but just saying, if you're going to get into 3D printing and you're like, oh, or you're new and like, oh, I'm going to get a 3D printer, I really suggest buying extra parts for your 3D printer. And if you don't have that option to buy extra parts from the store where you bought your 3D printer, then your option would be to buy it from another store, or just buy some parts from somewhere. And I would suggest buying the whole hot end assembly as one piece, like the throat, this heater block, and the nozzle, as one bit, because the different size heater blocks, there are different dimensions, and inside the heater block you need the throat and the nozzle to touch, so there's no gap so they're touching. And inside the heater block, if there's a gap, then you'll have hot plastics, leaking out. So you don't want that, because it'll just make a mess of everything will just be all hot plastic. And another thing maybe I didn't mention, maybe I did. Yeah, the threading, the length of threading on the nozzle differs, and that depends on the dimensions of your heater block. So if you have a thick heater block, you need a longer threaded nozzle, and the throat right there, or maybe more. Anyway, you need more. This is for a volcano hot end. And if you're going to be swapping out nozzles because you want to print at a 2mm or 4mm, you're putting some pliers or something on there on the corners, and if there's like hot plastic, it's kind of hard to get a grip on these on the sides here. They're machined to be about 7mm. It depends on the nozzle. But you can use these sockets to get it, hold on to the heater block, and then put a socket in there and loosen it up. You can do it that way. But you need clean corners. And if you got a bunch of hot plastic on there, it's kind of hard. And if it's clogged up and stuck, then you're going to be twisting with the pliers or the crescent wrench or something, and you might strip the corners. Then you got a bigger problem. That's kind of an issue there. And because of that, I would suggest maybe getting something like this, a big one, a big nozzle. So this has more surface space on the sides there. This is a 10, I think a 10? 8. So the size of this, oh here it goes, fits in there. That's, what is it? Yeah, 10 millimeters. But even if you have, it's supposed to fit in there, but if you got a little bit of plastic, it's hard to fit in there. So I got a little bit of plastic on there, and it doesn't slide in there as easily. So so the bigger size allows you easier grip with a wrench or something to keep in mind. All right, and yeah, so I'll talk about the different assemblies. This is I bought this extra one for a boat-in setup, but you'll notice here I don't have the retention screw here, and the heater blocks are designed differently. Here's a retention screw for the heating element here, and depending on how you set up your heater block, it might interfere with reattaching the extruder onto the carriage, because you can't screw it down, so you have to reassemble it in a different order. So assemble this throat and then tighten that down. This screw here, this nut, I have that as a way of holding the throat in position, so you don't get any of this floppy action. Because when the carriage is moving, the cables are pulling, you don't want that stuff happening there. So it's just a big pain in the ass. But anyway, I'll talk about that. Please enjoy the rest of the things. Goodbye. So the easiest way to fix a clog is just to swap out the whole throat, heater block, and nozzle setup. If you want to unclog it, you should probably remove. You have to disassemble the direct feed extruder, because if you don't, you're going to be in there with like a wire and trying to stab through the nozzle to get the clog out. You got to heat up the heater block, and then take the wire, and you'll be jabbing. Oh shit! You'll be jabbing the wire into the, like, trying to clear it out, but you'll be like this, and say it's clogged, and then you're like, oh, it's gonna get, whoa, and you know 200 degrees here, you start ramming your finger into the heater block, that's terrible. Or if the nozzle gets cleared and you got some hot plastic coming out the top, hot loads spewing out the top here, well, they can fall back down. They come up and then they go down. I'm going to call this going down process. I'm going to name it, coin a phrase here. I'm going to call it gravity. And the gravity, I don't, if you use that word, maybe you can use it. Maybe your friends don't know what it is, but I'm just going to call it gravity. It's going to plop down on your hand, so you're burning your fingers, sticking it this way, or you got hot loads coming down on your fingers from gravity, and yeah, none of those situations are good. So I would suggest that you try to unclog the throat. If you really, like, I don't have another throat and I need to get back to printing right away, you try to unclog it maybe this way or upside down, so you have better control of it than on this assembly here. So just take it off, and you still have to you can still use all the wiring, but you'll just do it in a different place. So it's just a pain in the ass if you want to unclog it. So let's give that a go. This one is clogged, and I got to heat it up and push the wire through there and then get it unclogged. So let's do that. Okay, I just wanted to show a couple of modifications that I did to my extruder here. So the way it was given to me from the factory was kind of like this, with this part is kind of the same, but the screw here that attaches to the carriage was upside down, and you screwed it in from the bottom using a Allen wrench, a hex nut, a hex screw type thing, and it was alright. It had some threading in there, but it would get loose now. And so I went from the top down, and I put in just a regular old nut to hold it in place. On the other side, I used a screw going up that way. Also, the one that I got, and I say the one that I got because I don't know if they modified. If you watch that Australian guy, Maker Muse, I forget his name, but yeah, he just talks about the modifications. We modified this and now it's better. But so I don't know what kind of product you'll get. But if you have this kind of retaining screw, this screw holds the throat in place, and you see this one doesn't have that retaining screw. This is another piece that I bought because I buy a lot of extra parts, because just in situations like this I got a bunch of them. Alright, so you might not get that, and so the default, or the thing you'll find on RipRap, the RipRap wiki, is that they used to put in a screw, a bolt, a nut, to lock it into place. So, and you can see that I did that. I used that. See, that right there? That's where I used the screw that in, and I don't have it here, just to show you what happens if you don't have that screw. So you can get movement around here. It's like, oh shit, this thing is floppy. So you need to put the nut in there and tighten it down so that the throat doesn't flop around. You got cables moving all over the place. You'll get your, as the machine moves around, you'll get this thing flopping around. You don't want that. You want this thing to stay perfectly the way it is and just go burr, 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 burr. So yeah, if you don't have that, maybe consider putting that in. And if you're swapping out parts and trying different nozzle types and stuff like that, you might end up, this is made of, aluminum, very soft. You might end up stripping that, and then what are you going to do if you, oh shit, well, put in the retaining screw, the retaining nut. Alright, so I got the throat flipped, and there's the hole right in there, so I'm going to just put this in there. Now I know I clogged it up with clear filament, so I'm just going to put this bronze in there and push it through, and oh, there it goes. The pipes are clean, and I'm getting a whole bunch of bronze squirting out of there, so we're pretty much clean. It's 205 degrees there, so I'll take my cleaning tool there, scrape that off. Yucky. I don't want any of that. Get off. You got a lot of hot load in there. Still a hot load. It's hard for the needle to find the... There it goes. So I turned it off, it's cooling down. It'll cool down here. It's a little bit dangerous, don't touch that thing. Look at that. Like cleaning out an airbrush, but instead of paint, you've got hot load. Yeah, so he's back up, printing the same thing I got clogged up on before, and so I changed out the nozzle to the big one. I didn't go back to the small ones, and yeah, I rearranged the assembly. So maybe I'll show that later in another video, but yeah, it's just a lot better just to replace the whole thing than try to unclog the throat and the nozzle. Alright, come back. Bye bye.